Brings me to a moment I've dreaded and forces me to suspend my long-standing attempt at neutrality. There is no real choice this November. There is only the perpetuation, however flawed and feeble you might perceive it, of our fragile 249-year-old experiment. The presumptive Republican nominee is the opioid of all opioids.
In a world of Harrison Butners, be a Ken Burns. As graduation ceremonies take place across the country, some colleges are blessed with great commencement speakers, and some are forced to listen as a man who's least likely to get tackled in a football game mansplain career options to graduating women.
Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world.
Apparently, enjoy the PTA, bitches. Not the advice you want to hear when you're $100,000 in debt earning a degree in electrical engineering.
But for the students of Brandeis University, their speaker was acclaimed director Ken Burns. The Oscar-nominated filmmaker is well known for his historical documentaries and television series, which cover a wide array of topics in US history. And it is with the great experiment of a country that he turned his focus towards, taking words firstly from the great James Baldwin as he began highlighting our shared humanity, citing words from the pioneer who he had the privilege of interviewing.
In a filmed interview I conducted with the writer James Baldwin more than 40 years ago, he said, "No one was ever born who agreed to be a slave, who accepted it. That is, slavery is a condition imposed from without." Of course, the moment I say that, Baldwin continued, I realize that multitudes and multitudes of people, for various reasons of their own, enslave themselves every hour of every day to this or that doctrine, this or that delusion of safety, this or that lie. Anti-Semites, for example, he went on, are slaves to a delusion. People who hate Negroes are slaves. People who love money are slaves. We are living in a universe really of willing slaves.
Burns has, in his film career, demonstrated an incredible nuance, which is important to his documentary process, and has been a hallmark of his career as a storyteller. But in the latter part of his speech, he threw nuance out the window and opted for a direct appeal regarding the upcoming presidential election, where he admittedly took a brief pause from his promise of neutrality. Burns encouraged the graduates to use their vote to preserve the United States' resistance to militant ideology.
Which brings me to a moment I've dreaded and forces me to suspend my long-standing attempt at neutrality. There is no real choice this November. There is only the perpetuation, however flawed and feeble you might perceive it, of our fragile 249-year-old experiment, or the entropy that will engulf and destroy us if we take the other route. When, as Mercy Otis Warren would say, the checks of conscience are thrown aside and a deformed picture of the soul is revealed. The presumptive Republican nominee is the opioid of all opioids, an easy cure for what some believe is the solution to our myriad pains and problems, when in fact, with him you end up re-enslaved with an even bigger problem, a worse affliction and addiction, a bigger delusion, James Baldwin would say, the author and finisher of our national existence, our national suicide, as Mr. Lincoln prophesies. Do not be seduced by easy equalization. There is nothing equal about this equation. We are at an existential crossroads in our political and civic lives. This is a choice that could not be clearer.
And this is the point, right? We can't be neutral. As we barrel towards November, there are clear warning signs. Denying it would be foolish. And I'm not just talking about New York Times polls that are historically skewed to those on the right. I'm talking about why things like consumer confidence in the economy remains low despite historic lows in unemployment, wages being higher than pre-pandemic numbers and record-breaking job numbers. And yet more Americans have claimed to trust Trump in regards to the economy than Biden.
If I'm elected, you won't lose one plant, you'll have plants coming into this country. You're going to have jobs again. You won't lose one plant. I promise you that.
The $10 billion Foxconn investment in an LCD plant in Racine County that never arrived. That land remains mostly empty.
When my predecessor came to Racine with the promise of, quote, reclaiming our country's proud manufacturing legacy. In fact, he came here with your Senator, Ron Johnson, literally holding a golden shovel, promising to build the 8th wonder of the world. Are you kidding me?
So, Peter, this new AI Microsoft thing, $3 billion, big job creators, that's in Racine. Isn't that the same town that Foxconn said, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, we're going to build a big plant, and they never did?
Yes, and that was a huge Trump announcement back then, and he said that the factory was going to be the 8th wonder of the world, but then Foxconn decided to really scale back their plans, and the land is still available, so Microsoft is going in.
It's going to be good for those people.
All right, thank you, Peter.
And the issue is, and always has been, messaging. As I said in a previous video, it's never more apparent than covering the silliness of Trump's consistent lies about his crowd sizes.
I think we're probably leaving in New Jersey. We had a rally, over 100,000 people this weekend. A lot of the mainstream media didn't want to say how many people. They didn't want to cover it.
The other thing is that there were 100,000 people at this rally on Saturday, not just from New Jersey, but also Pennsylvania, which is a swing state.
And when you see Wildwood on Saturday, where he has 100,000 people show up.
Presidential candidate Donald Trump came to the South Bronx today to speak to some supporters and to a fair amount of empty space in Crotona Park. He was as bellicose as you'd expect.
It's a glaring example of said failures when even the likes of CNN are giving oxygen to these blatant lies.
What was the crowd like and what kind of response did he get?
Well, certainly a bigger crowd than I think Democrats would like to see, particularly given this is one of the bluest counties in the entire country. Now, one of the things that was interesting to me is that the Trump campaign said that they were going to micro-target to get people from the community to come to this rally. I wasn't sure what to expect. I've gone to a lot of these rallies across the country, and there are often people who travel hundreds of miles to see Donald Trump, and they're not necessarily part of the community. However, one of the things that I found was that there were a lot of people here that were actually from the Bronx.
And we wonder why we have a messaging issue. Now, I understand the Biden administration needs to do a better job in penetrating the noise, but we have a job to do also if preserving democracy is our aim. And growing complacent to his lies and disinformation, whether it's crowd size or the ever elusive new and improved Obamacare alternative that he has tucked away for a rainy day, it's still important to call it to attention.
There's a crisis at the border. What would you do if you are elected?
We have to seal it up. Go back to my program. We had the safest border in history. I built 571 miles of wall. We had 200 miles ready to go. We just had to flip it up. And they decided that they wanted open borders.
Now, there's some dispute over those numbers. PolitiFact reports more than 450 miles of border wall were built during former President Trump's first term. Much of that, though, was to replace old broken barriers. 50 miles of that wall were brand new.
Dude, one stat before we go. Venezuela was very crime-ridden. They announced the other day 72% reduction in crime in the last year. You know why? They moved all their criminals from Venezuela right into the good old USA. And Biden let them do it. It's a disgrace.
But, sir, where are those numbers coming from?
I guess I get them from the papers. In this case, I think it's a federal statement or, well, they're coming actually from Venezuela. They're coming from Venezuela.
We'll have to check on that.
Because the choice is not binary between two old geezers who are bad. It's between preserving democracy to fight another day or giving it up to spite your face.
We have a presumptive nominee for president facing 88 felony counts, and we're being prevented from even acknowledging it. These are not alternative facts. These are real facts. A candidate for president of the United States is on trial for sending a hush money payment to a porn star to avoid a sex scandal during his 2016 campaign, and then fraudulently disguising those payments in violation of the law. He's also charged with conspiring to overturn the election. He's also charged with stealing classified information, and a jury has already found him liable for rape in a civil court. And yet, in this Republican-controlled House, It's okay to talk about the trial, but you have to call it a sham.
We take down his words.
It's okay to say the jury is rigged.
Mr. Speaker, I demand that his words be taken down.
It's okay to say the court is corrupt.
Gentlemen will suspend.
But not Trump is corrupting the rule of law.
Enough! Send him to the big house, not the White House. Get the new exclusive tees, mugs, and stickers right now at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.